Hi everyone, I'm Aishwarya, a product marketer from the Zoho Click team. And today we're going to address something that's not only crucial to the success of any workplace, but a very important factor for fostering a positive and inclusive environment. And that's communication manners. So, understanding the nuances of how we interact virtually is crucial when you're trying to build a healthy workplace culture. So, today I'm going to quickly take you through some pointers you can look out for when you're communicating virtually. I think it's also important to understand that these are not absolute factors and they can vary situationally, but it's also helpful to keep these in the back of your mind whenever you're communicating virtually. So, starting off from the first conversation you have with someone, it's important to understand how you address them in the first place. So, I think the safest way to address someone when when you're speaking to them for the first time is by tagging them. So, what this does is it avoids the need to use terminology like sir or ma'am, which might be a bit outdated in the current situation of office dynamics. And even asking them for that matter, once you start speaking to them, how they would like to be referred would be a good bet. And apart from addressing them, have you also found it exhausting when someone just says hey or hi when they reach out to you? I think in this pace of business, like I had mentioned, it's always best to give some kind of context when you're reaching out to someone, which saves time for everyone involved. This doesn't mean that you have to skip the pleasantries and not say hi or how are you doing and things like that. You can just incorporate them into your message. And the message that you're sending here, so some people, I'm guilty of doing this myself, but some people have the habit of splitting their messages into multiple smaller messages. I know a lot of people here also prefer it this way, but if you think about it on a grander scale, the receiver seeing five messages from one person in their notifications could raise some concern. So, this also doesn't mean you should stuff five paragraphs in one message. What I'm trying to say is that you can use your judgment in these situations, but remember how the receiver may perceive it in that situation. So, speaking of users' perceptions, it's also important to keep them in mind when you're creating a message in general, just to make sure that your tone is appropriate. So, when you're sending a message or responding to one, just ensure that you address the receiver and be clear in your communication. And this clarity of the message should also be uniform across users. For example, you may have friends in other teams who you may be a little nice to on public channels. Use certain emojis that kind of display your comfort level with them. But when you're referring to other colleagues who you might see as acquaintances more than friends, and you don't use the same tone with them, it may be seen as a sort of it's not uniform across all of the people. So to make sure that they don't feel bad or that there's no misunderstanding, the best way to deal with this would be to be uniform across all public forums. So like what I'm trying to say is the comfort that you're displaying, it can be expressed in private chat, but just to avoid misunderstanding, it's always best to keep it uniform in public. So the shift that I discussed earlier about how the office dynamics is, I think one thing to note is that the way or how people communicate has changed drastically. So I think a big part of that, as everyone here might know, is that the use of emojis has played a vital role in this communication. But I think the issue with that is that the way people use emojis varies greatly. So, a certain smiley that I think might sound friendly might be perceived as a little sarcastic by some other user. So, keeping some of these points that you can see in the screen in the back of your mind while using emojis might benefit everyone. And while emojis have become an integral part of communication, unfortunately, this also comes with its own challenges. So, emojis have become a means of people responding to messages, even. So, instead of acknowledging an important message, people can sometimes use emojis to acknowledge a message, or worse, just see the message and not respond at all. So, when you're addressed by a colleague, it's important to, I think, one, see the message as early as possible and then reply to the message with an appropriate message. So this doesn't mean that you shouldn't use emoji reactions at all. I think what I'm trying to say is that, for example, if someone has thanked you for something, instead of saying you're welcome, you could use a reaction to it, But if someone's asking you about an important deadline, I don't think it's appropriate to just react with a thumbs up. So, as I had mentioned, look at the situation and see what is appropriate in terms of an acknowledgement. And the next point is about when you're dealing with groups or channels. So if you're unsure about something and you want to ask a doubt or anything like that, always remember to search first if the question has already been asked before. So this saves time for everybody involved, and it avoids multiple topics being breached in the same channel or group multiple times. And another important point actually to note when you're dealing with public groups is to keep everything in the open. So when you discuss things that are meant for everyone in the group and you do it in private, it might lead to some disconnect between the members of the group. So whether it's to discuss action items or set timelines, it's always best to keep things public. And lastly, as discussed, when we're setting timelines or responding to timelines, avoid using terms like EOD or end of day. EOD might be different for different people, and it's always best to be specific in the time that you mean when you're setting timelines and deadlines. And of course, when you're setting it, always make sure that you stick to these and communicate when you aren't able to stick to these particular timelines. So, in conclusion, we've gone through the nuances of respectful communication in the workplace, and we've highlighted the role it plays in shaping a positive environment. So, I think together, let's continue to follow the importance of respectful communication in every aspect of our professional lives. Thank you.